Right, so we've become rather accustomed to IDF soldiers, the Israeli Defense Force, taking to social media platforms to share some of the barbarities that they've been carrying out, haven't we? Be that making meals in abandoned homes with food left behind to supplement their rations, for example, and then getting featured in a glossy magazine story over it, to rummaging through drawers of underwear, to throwing around kids' toys in a blown-up lorry they've just acquired, all essentially reveling in the terror they've caused, the evacuations they've driven. They are in possession of such a sense of superiority and control with their ongoing intentions, they don't even feel the need to lie about them. I happened across this video clip here of an IDF soldier in Gaza laying out exactly what is coming, what the plan for Gaza is, that they're going to take Gaza. And really it's not anything that should surprise us, but given it flies in the face of everything Israel is officially saying and doing, it also echoes what many others in Israel have said, not least in Israeli government. It isn't the sort of thing an ordinary IDF soldier would say, above their pay grade as this would be, if it wasn't actually the truth of the matter.
The whole Gaza, whether it be the terrorists themselves, whether it be the barbarians who came into Israel on October 7th, whether it be the people who clapped and cheered for the terrorists as they brought hostages back, whether it be the people who work for Hamas within Gaza, who look like simple civilians, and a whole network of just basically everyone in Gaza, maybe not 100%, but very much more than 10% and much more than 50%. Everywhere in Gaza, there's supporters of Hamas, people who believe in Hamas. This is not something where there's only a few people here and there, but most people are good. This is a people, the Muslims who live in Gaza, they want something else in life, something that is foreign to all of us. And the tragedy is that they have chosen death over life and what is bad as opposed to good. Gaza could be a beautiful place, but they haven't, aside for a small amount of neighborhoods of the rich people of Gaza, people live in poverty, and it's just an absolute dump, and it's too bad. But hopefully in the future, and I believe that reality is much stronger than any ideology of a politician or any pressures that might be applied on politicians, that the situation won't last for too long, and the state of Israel will eventually return to Gaza for good. And when we do, Gaza will become some of the most in-demand real estate in Israel. And when Gush Katif was evacuated, we had 8,000 people in something like 20 communities. We're going to have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people occupying all the beachfront property. We're going to have resorts, and we're going to turn it really into a beautiful place.
Right, so that was a short-ish clip of an IDF soldier posting a video to social media. Wonderful American accent he's got there, I thought, isn't it? Talking about most people in Gaza, though his stats for that range from 10% to 50% supporting Hamas. Well, they are the official government of Gaza, though whether they really support them is another matter, or even eligible for a vote when half the population of Gaza are children, but don't let that stop this Burke in the middle of his Instagram upload, or wherever he posted it originally. He speaks of the people of Gaza wanting something foreign to all of them. Well, again, I notice your accent there. I can't help it, you see. You're white skin as well. Definitely a local yourself, aren't you? But in making that choice, the Gazan people have chosen death over life, he said. Well, you're an occupying power, or a representative thereof. You have a responsibility to them, not the power of God, not the power of life and death over them. No wonder the International Court of Justice ripped up the legality of your occupation, if only in an advisory capacity. Bad versus good, this chap called it. Israel's most moral army here, folks. I'm not sure the world sees you as such. Sunshine, you represent what is widely now condemned as a pariah state by people all around the world, though shamefully for far too many of us, we don't have governments reflecting that view, which no doubt emboldens the honesty of this chap's opinions to whoever's following him. Gaza could be a beautiful place, he says. It is for rich Gazans. It's beautiful for them. Rich Gazans? Who are they? Where have they been all this time? I haven't heard about them. I haven't seen any. Last time I looked, Gaza was from end to end an open-air concentration camp. Who's got money there then? What can they buy with it? A way out, maybe? If so, I bet they took it and went, if that was the case. It's a nonsense, of course, as is the soldiers' view that the Gazan people have chosen the conditions they live in, rather than them being inflicted on them by an occupying state capable of turning the water and turning the power off to them. Gaza is an absolute dump, he said. And that's too bad, he says. Well, no, because the eyes of the world have been opened more widely to that over the last 10 months. Eyes that should have been opened decades ago, to be honest with you, because Israel has abused these people, abused this land, treated them as second class, enacted segregation, apartheid, as that is. They don't like being called an apartheid state, though, do they? Blocking people from travelling freely, been killing them indiscriminately for years over the silliest things, locking them up without charge, assaulting them savagely, but even sexually assaulting them is something, according to a recent Israeli poll, is apparently now acceptable. Not only does a view like that damn their Israeli government and their security forces in the IDF, but the general public of Israel as well. That's a horrifying statistic to say, horrifying viewpoint that so many people hold, if that poll is truly representative. On top of that, we've now had war against these people in Gaza, end-to-end destruction of everything in the Gaza Strip, from mosques to schools to hospitals, not to mention all of the homes. Famine and disease are running rampant. Polio is now running rife through a land that eliminated that disease at the end of the last century. For sure, Gaza's a dump because of the Gazans. But then he came on to the most egregious part for me, I felt, because he spoke about reality versus politics and the pressure politicians might be under. Because the reality, in his view, was that Israel are going to take Gaza. Having ended its settlement of the Gaza Strip in 2006, Israel will again return there, and then it will be made beautiful. It will become the most in-demand real estate in Israel, and they'll have tens of thousands of people occupying the beachfront properties. There will be resorts, and it will be a beautiful place, he says. Frankly, if that comes to pass, this would be a planet I want to get off of. What a global failure that would be if it happens to come to pass. If Israel finally completes their land seizures in defiance of international law and they end up just being allowed to absorb Palestine. We know many in Israel want that land. Too often it is settlers from other countries, like that guy with his accent presumably, who are demanding the seizure of that land. The Nahala movement, who want all of Palestine for Israel, see it as theirs by divine right, when that is complete nonsense, and who treat the far-right supporters of the settler movement like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich as rock stars, people who are keeping Benjamin Netanyahu in power and who have repeatedly warned him not to end this war, or else they'll see him dumped out of power, and demand that Gaza be taken by Israel in disregard of international law that they've decided they don't want to recognise. In light of that, of course, we've seen Netanyahu scupper every single peace talk and ceasefire discussion to protect himself and his precarious position, just as we're about to enter more ceasefire talks, and no doubt it's going to end exactly the same way, isn't it? But not only that, but with the diplomatic protection Israel continues to enjoy from Western nations, the US especially, along with the continued arms sales, $3.5 billion worth the US just signed off as well. And all despite over 40,000 innocent Gazans having now been killed, nearly 100,000 Gazans injured. What pressure is Israel really under to stop? Why should it not just carry on doing what it's doing? Carry on towards seizing what remains of Palestine when nobody is really acting to stand against them from doing that? Therefore, should we really be surprised that an IDF soldier, an ordinary soldier, is prepared to be so candid on such matters on his social media, and where he believes things are heading so as to say Gaza is basically going to be taken? I mean, most military people, you imagine, have to be rather careful with what they say publicly, but this guy puts it all out on social media for all and sundry to watch, and clearly fears no ramifications for what he said there. Therefore, broadly, this can be assumed to be a prevailing attitude. Clearly, this is an acceptable opinion to hold. What makes it so, unless clearly there's some concerted effort towards making that vision a reality from higher up? There cannot be a peaceful end to this conflict whilst Israel, however surreptitiously, holds such aims and goals at some level in its administration. Certainly holds them at governmental level amongst the likes of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and apparently amongst the IDF too, as this guy shows. No longer can the Israeli occupation of Palestine be tolerated, but with views held like this amongst Israelis, and we don't know how prevailing that view is, it becomes harder and harder to see how the two nations can possibly live alongside each other in peace in the future. Certainly that's got to be an honest truth about things. Whilst this hard-right Netanyahu-led coalition government remains in power, certainly that's got to be the truth. Surely that's obvious and we can all see that. Meanwhile, Israel has sunk to an all-new low in the course of its decimation of Gaza and its people, having now targeted schools in a disproportionate manner throughout this month, claiming as always that Hamas is hiding there, always the excuse, whilst never providing any evidence for it. It's just more infrastructure being levelled to make way for, well, Israeli occupation later on when they take the land. It's not like anybody's censoring them or anything like that, is it? Get the details of that story in this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.